G'day, welcome to GlassBox. My name's Drew. Today I want to just go back and have a bit of a nostalgic look at one of my largest setups, of which I put a lot of effort into. My 750 litre community marine tank. So this was basically a no holds barred, no budget spared setup that I had custom built through a lot of research. You know, I trolled the Maswa forums, which is the Marine Aquarium Society of WA. Those guys gave me a lot of good advice and pretty much educated me on how to keep marine and make sure that I did it properly. So part of my ideas with that tank is the larger that you can go, the more stable the environment will be. And yeah, I've set up a slideshow of images. So basically I'll just go through, talk about how I set everything up, what I did equipment wise, and the challenges of which that I faced over time with that tank. So it was basically running for about 7 years, and takes, you know, it'll show you basically, you know, the amount of time it does take to get a stable aquarium set up, and you know, hopefully show you the level that I actually got this tank to. So let's start basically with how I got into the hobby, which was basically my little 2-foot bow front marine tank. So you can see the image there. There's a lot of long polyp stony coral. There's a torch coral at the back there. Some goniopora at the front. There's a Duncan in the middle. There's a brain coral on the other side at the back, that yellow thing. Bit of zoanthids and things like that through it. It's not a very good image. I think I took it on an N95 over in about 2000, late 2003 probably. And this little setup was running for a couple of years. I had an external hang on the back filter made of acrylic that had a built-in protein skimmer. Small water volume. I did have a chiller running on this tank because, you know, it could get pretty hot in Brisbane. And loved it. Basically started my whole passion for this, you know, keeping fish tanks. Okay, so that brings me to this guy. This is my start of my marine tank. So I wanted to get it up off the ground. It's a 900 high tank stand. I had it custom made out of Jarrah, so it was a large kind of like a plinth around the whole entire bottom of the tank, which allowed the tank to hide at least you know, a good portion of the deep sand bed. So that was the theory that I ran. A lot of people did bare bottom and stuff, but I wanted to get all of the denitrifying bacteria to exist within the substrate. So I thought that recessing the tank down a little bit could hide that, and it also gave a nice little bar to rest on while you're sticking your head in the tank and having a look. On the right hand side you can see my weir and the dual overflows that I had, and the guys from the forums helped me calculate the size of that to be able to match it to the flow rate through the tank. There's a cheap protein skimmer that I started with. There's a large bin underneath which was set up for auto top up. And yeah, there's my original purchase of the live rock. So that was the first one that I got from the local fish shop over here. It wasn't much. I think it was 2 boxes of live rock. Being a 750 litre aquarium, it was made a small dent. So okay, so there's the door setup that I've actually had set up. They were all on magnets, and so I could have easy access to the sump underneath and maintenance of the tank. Here's some LED moonlights that I had set up. That was one of my first lighting purchases. So it's just a strip of LEDs. All of the lights that I actually had, there's 3 250 watt metal halides. There's a large 5-foot 80 watt actinic bulbs. Now all of those lights were custom ordered from Singapore, a company called DE Lighting. I don't know if they exist now. If I would have my time again with the technology advances, I'd definitely go LED. So we can see there, I flipped them over just to show the size of these bloody things. There's the actinics on, and I've had a nice little channel that ran down the center of the actinic bulbs where I could mount my moonlights. They were on a separate timer, and they just allowed me to see a bit of the tank when the lights were off. So I went to Bunnings and bought the clip together shelving system to make a frame for my lights, and that was out in the back when I was doing a renovation to the bathroom, so I used it a bit of a spray booth. So I sprayed that matte black. There's the lights mounted and everything in its lighting frame. I also created a shelf underneath to hold the ballasts, which actually start the metal halides. You can see down there, there's the chiller and the return pump. And yeah, so that was just waiting for the tank to get finished getting built. Now the tank was 12 mil glass and beveled edges and all of those things. There's a picture of the tank there. That brings me to, there was a gap in that point where the tank wasn't there. So where I had it set up with the initial lot of live rock that I'd purchased from the fish shop, I had it cycling, went away on holidays, and we had a house sitter, and because of the tank that I had made, it didn't have enough bracing on the back, and it cracked all the way from the return pipe all the way along the back pane and dumped 700 litres of water on my wood floor. So that was fantastic. So I had to get the tank repaired, and that's the tank back from repairs. So you can see that it's a little bit, yeah, still a bit of marks and whatnot on there. So that was the first rough start that I had with this monster of a tank. Okay, so the next picture is the order of tons gear that I actually got from Aqua Depot, I think. I had 2 turbale streams that were linked with a multi-controller to be able to create the wave flow throughout the tank. I used the magnet holders, and at the back there was the tons osmolator, which is basically the auto top-up system. Like I said, I went for basically quality on this tank. I wanted to make sure that everything was stable, and finally got it up and running after that little hiccup. So that was the rescape. I went for more of a center bommy after I had a bit of a think about how I wanted to scape the tank and eventually how I wanted it to get. Now the next order of rock that I actually purchased was flown over from Cairns. It was, yeah, two more boxes of live rock, of which that were as fresh as you can get. So cracked off the reef, sent over to me, picked up from the airport, and popped in the tank as quick as I could get it. Righto, there's a pic of the moonlights and whatnot. So here, this is finally with the extra rock that I had brought over from Cairns. You can see that it had a lot of macroalgae on it. There was a lot of hitchhikers as well on it. It started cycling. You can see it's gone a bit green. That's all part of, you know, the cycle of the tank. There was some, you know, starfish in there, and I've added some trochus snails, and because it had to actually travel so far, being over here in Western Australia, there was a fair bit of die-off. So monitoring that whole transition. Here's a later photo after, you know, quite a long time, set up with all of my corals, acropora, and there's a large clam about the size of a football in the middle there. That was pretty cool. A school of Chromus, sand sifting goby, and peppy shrimp, a few peppermint shrimp in there for apstasia control. So yeah, stocking wise, I had a couple of Antheas in there, which I really enjoyed. There's a large olivaceous tang. He was my favourite. I grew him from quite a small size. There'll be a photo of him coming back up. Zoanthid colonies. What else can I see in there? There's pulsing xenia that I had that did really good, and it would grow so much that I would tear handfuls of that stuff off and connect it to rock and actually sell it back to the fish shop for a store credit. So that was pretty good for the hobby. There's a little cleaner wrasse that you can see there. Put a large blue Linkia starfish, Duncans and Lobophilias. You can see some Acropora at the back there. I've got a large long spine diadema urchin in there. Corillomorphs, whole heap of stuff. And yeah, it was a labour of love really, and a lot of challenges. The biggest challenge was early I had a fair bit of Bryopsis algae that I seemed to might have introduced by collecting natural seawater here from Bunbury. I'd go just before the high tide and get it at the boat ramp. So if I had my time again, I'd probably mix up my water. I was using RO for top up, but maybe I skimped by collecting the water. But again, it was fun. I would go out and get the water and do that every week. I would fill up a couple of fuel containers and chuck them in the back of the car. But again, it introduced a lot of algae into the tank, and you know, wasn't as stable of which it should have been. So you can see there's a green section down there that had a bit of the Bryopsis. From what I know now, I just would have treated that with hydrogen peroxide, and I think that would have kept everything under control. You know, successes, I had a lot of good growth on my coral. This was before I was using a calcium reactor. I was dosing Damprid. Damprid was a good source of carbon for me. There's a beautiful picture of my large sailfin tang. He was the big feature fish, as well as my olivaceous tang and my little Scopus tang. Loved the tangs. They were pretty much the fish that I would go for. I'd feed them nori on a little clip, which is pretty common. But yeah, it was awesome to see all of the action that you could have going in the tank with these large fish cruising around. And you know, being 5 foot, I reckon they were just, it was just big enough for those fish. So potentially you could have had maybe less live rock or a little bit more room. Did a couple of trips to Perth with the guys and went up to, might have been Ocean Reefs, and picked up a pair of porcelain crabs living in an anemone. Looks a bit bleached there, but yeah, another picture of myself in tang, fat and happy. He was a wonderful fish. There's Ollie, the olivaceous orange shoulder tang. But yeah, I was trying to propagate some stuff. A little frag rack at the back there. There's another close-up of my porcelain crab. Now, one thing with all of the tank, when I got the rock from Cairns, it did come with a lot of hitchhikers. There were some hairy crabs in there that I should have gone through with a bit more of a fine-tooth comb and pulled out. There was multiple mantis shrimp, but there eventually was only one. So he went around and pretty much killed off most of the stuff in the tank. So there's another regret. So yeah, that mantis shrimp, he caused me a lot of grief. Killed my porcelain crabs, took a lot of my coral gobies, and just couldn't get him out as much as I tried. I found his hole many times and tried to poke him with my metal tongs and things like that, but yeah, I couldn't get him until I finally dismantled the tank and got him in the sump, and then took him back to the fish shop. Had a bicolor blenny, which you can see in the middle there. He was another cool guy. This is just a spotted mandarin. That photo actually won me something within the Massawa group. Well, I think it was on the Facebook page. I got some magazines actually from that photo. This is going back in a bit of time. This, you can see the Bryopsis algae. That one shows. You can see my little bicolor blenny. His name was Fantapants, and yeah, he's sitting near a nice tuft of Bryopsis, which could be quite invasive. But yeah, like I said, I would have just burnt that off with some hydrogen peroxide had I known. There's a lovely little flame hawk sitting in a little crop of Acropora. But again, that's a pretty green looking photo. So you can see that that was caused by a natural collection of seawater instead of using RO and mixing up the salt. You know, it's probably 4 times the work doing it that way, but it would save all of your livestock the issues. So that's probably lighting too. There's a shot of my porcelain crabs. You can see that they were sitting in a sand sifting anemone. They were wonderful little crabs with their sweeping arms pulling stuff out of the water column. Nice picture of my Maxima clam, and it's got a starfish on the side there. So yeah, I think these might be, oh, there's a Moorish idol that I tried to keep for a while. They're pretty notorious for being poor feeders, so another poor casualty of my tank. You know, I think a lot of these fish were attacked by the mantis, which caused me a lot of grief. Nice shot of the Antheas. One thing I did have throughout all of this was a nice pair of Ocellaris clownfish. They lived in a torch coral, and I actually got them spawning many times, but didn't actually get any fry from that, simply because they probably got sucked over the weir and into the sump or eaten. So there's a massive big shot of Ollie. There's another photo coming up that shows you how small he was when he was. That's him there. He was about 7 centimeters when I got him, and he ended up being over 30. So that to me was a nice achievement, to be able to grow Ollie up, and that only took him 3 months to get that big. So always research your fish when you're looking to get him, because he was quite cute in the shop, and I'm sure anyone would have loved to shove him in a tank. And to see in 3 months for him to grow to that size, you can get yourself into some trouble pretty quickly. There was a fair bit of Aptasia throughout the tank. I tried many different versions in control, because I struggled to get peppy shrimp. They were quite expensive to get. So I tried a couple of angels, and even syringing. I did hot water injection into the Aptasia. I also did hydrogen peroxide injection into the Aptasia. There's a photo of my Ocellaris clownfish fanning some eggs, of which that I had there. Another tank shot. There's some coral banded shrimp down on the right, if you can see that down near the magnet cleaner. But yeah, more macroalgae, the big green section. A nice section there that you can see with some large acropora and some soft corals. I don't know if all of these are in order. You can see my torch coral there with my clownfish in it. They were very active in and out of that thing, which was always fun to watch. Sinulara, I think this guy is. He ended up being a nice coral that I ended up propagating. You can see the rubber band on the little piece of live rock there. So you can see that it's cleaned up a lot from its green days. This is over a period of potentially a year or two. You can see that the colonies of zoanthids are starting to get established and spreading out throughout the place. And yeah, I had other members of the reefing community shut down their tank, so I actually was a bit of a custodian for a lot of those corals for a while, which was really nice to be able to fill out the tank pretty quickly. You can see the Xenia there just pretty much getting out of control. It was a bit of a monster of a coral that just kept you know, duplicating itself. There's a more established shot of my tank. This is pretty much how I've had it for a very long time now. So you can see there's some beautiful matchstick acropora at the front there. The reason why I went so crazy with the lighting, there was 850 watts on this tank, so I could keep the clams and things like that. So you can see a clam in the foreground there near the glass. Here is a shot of the bane of my existence, which was this mantis shrimp. He was responsible for taking at least, I'd hate to say, about $1,000 worth of livestock within the tank. It was shocking dealing with, oh, where did that fish go, or where did that little shrimp go? Finding out that this guy is pretty much the most well-fed mantis shrimp in the aquarium keeping hobby. So yeah, lots of here's a beautiful little flame hawk. He was nice, perching up on my corals. Zoanthid garden, which yeah, spreading out. Here's a batch of clownfish eggs that they've put down. They'd regularly spawn, and yeah, every month or so they'd drop a new batch of eggs. Never actually got any fry out of them. They'd once they'd hatch, I'm sure they got pulled over to the weir, or the fish had a good feed on whatever came out of there. Here's a later shot of my tank. You know, I've switched over to the 20k bulbs, and you can see it's a lot bluer than it was before. A lot of surface agitation due to all of the power heads that I had within the tank, just to be able to make sure that there's enough flow for all of the stony corals. And yeah, you can see here's a shot here of some beautiful matchstick coral, a nice patch of bryopsis, which I would have burnt off, like I said, with hydrogen peroxide. But yeah, no, very, very, very much loved and laboured tank. And I was very much rewarded by this tank, so everything, all the effort that I put into it did pay back in folds. But all in all, yeah, a labour of love, and you know, I think you really got to obsess about these things to be able to get the rewards for what you put in. I'll leave you with what limited footage I do have of this tank, and if you have enjoyed looking back at the tank as I have, just click on subscribe, like the video. I'll be sure to bring you a lot more content. I'm looking to reach out to other people within the hobby, and I'll see if they want to do a rundown on their setup, and see if they want to showcase their tank like I've wanted to showcase mine. So yeah, I'll leave you with this, and I'll see you again. Righto, so that was my 750 litre 5-foot community marine tank. If you did enjoy watching that, just click on the subscribe button or like the video, and stay tuned for a lot more GlassBox action, where I'll reach out to other people within the hobby and see if they want to do some tank rundowns of their setups. So I'll see you again.